Let me also now bring in Jonathan Ruhe, Director of Foreign Policy at the Jewish Institute for National Security of America. Jonathan, it's always good to have you. The ceasefire, to both Robert and Joe's reporting there, seems to be on extremely shaky ground, not only with the fighting in Lebanon that Iran just responded to, but you've got confusion over the fate of the enriched uranium, the fact that the Strait is not back open this morning. What's your view on where things stand right now?
I certainly agree with everything we've heard, which is this ceasefire is indeed incredibly tenuous. I think a helpful guide for viewers is to think back to the ceasefire in Gaza that President Trump reached last fall, where his approach was to just get the sides to agree to stop shooting and then try and iron out all the difficult details through negotiations after that. And so to bring what was a very intense and multi-front war to a screeching halt is always difficult. And I think, I would say 2 weeks is a long time in some sense to keep the guns silent, but also a very short time to try to negotiate what seem to be Iranian and U.S. views of the post-war situation that are very, very different. Mm-hmm.
I know, Jonathan, you just wrote in an op-ed for the Dispatch that President Trump risks losing the plot and the war in Iran and needs to be clear about the objectives and endgame. Big talks this coming weekend. What should be the United States red line in these talks?
So the two red lines, one is the one that was clear from before the war, which is Iran's nuclear program. Iran has been in violation of its nonproliferation obligations for years now. And so Iran needs to basically have a full accounting of its nuclear program at this point. And the second one is an issue that arose during the war itself, one that, frankly, the United States did not anticipate, which is the future of the Strait of Hormuz. It's an international waterway. Freedom of navigation is the overarching principle there, but Iran essentially treats it like the Panama or Suez Canal as its territorial waterway. And for that situation to persist would be catastrophic for the global economy and also for American credibility.
Joe, that enriched uranium is still there. We heard from War Secretary Pete Hegseth yesterday. We know where it is. We have our eyes on it. What are your sources at the White House in Washington telling you about what that means for our troops across the region? I mean, will that require boots on the ground at some point to extract that?
It's likely the biggest, if not one of the biggest factors in terms of President Trump saying that troops are going to remain, that military assets will remain around Iran, because clearly Secretary Hegseth said unequivocally the U.S. will make sure that the enriched uranium is dealt with. But he didn't elaborate beyond that. He basically said one way or another, whether that's by force or whether that's by Iran handing it over. He seemed to be bullish on the idea that Iran was in some way, in some negotiation, going to give up its enriched uranium. The Iranians have not signaled that they're willing to do that at all, at least not publicly. We haven't seen anything to that effect. So if there becomes this becomes a sticking point and there is no other way outside of military action, that may very well require some kind of boots-on-the-ground operation. No one, not from the Pentagon, not from the White House, has taken that option off the table yet. And it's not as if, like the missile facilities, you can just, launch strikes at it. It would be a sort of a massive, biohazard situation where you've got a lot of innocent people dying. So that there are only few options when it comes to extracting that by force, if it comes to that. And again, President Trump saying all military assets will be on the table until Iran follows through on its end of the bargain. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, you make a great point about what all it would take to extract it and then move it. And Robert, continuing of, enrichment is part of Iran's 10-point plan that they put forward yesterday. Yet you have President Trump, who just put out on Truth Social late last night. He said it was agreed to a long time ago. And despite all the fake rhetoric to the contrary, no nuclear weapons and the Strait of Hormuz will be open and safe. So there's so many contradicting messages here. I'm wondering what, those across the region are making of the two very different stories here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that your point about the contradicting messages is a good one. And I think there's something important to understand about Iran's position in the geopolitical landscape. They are viewed by many in the world as the most vocal voice of overt resistance to the United States. And so to see these messages coming out in which they will stand their ground, they will not give up the Strait of Hormuz, that is to be expected, to see Iran put that into the public sphere. What is happening behind closed doors is going to be an important element of all of this. Quite frankly, both sets of negotiators have their work cut out for them when it comes to trying to bridge the gaps that exist here. I think there's another element that is here as well, Mark, is that part of the reason that you have such contradicting messages coming out of Iran is that it's unclear who calls the shots in Iran. Everyone knows who calls the shots in the United States. That's President Trump. In Iran, they had their supreme leader eliminated. Their new supreme leader is still missing in action from the public eye. You have some voices that have risen to the top, like the president of Iran, the speaker of Iran's parliament. But you also have the IRGC, which has its views of the world. Then you have the Iranian military. So it's not all neatly coordinated in a hierarchical kind of manner. I mean, there are different voices, and each one has their own positions, and each one pulls their own unique weight inside of Iran. So that's the element here, is when you heard the White House saying that they're talking with some voices inside of Iran who they believe are reasonable. Do those voices have the ability to make decisions on behalf of Iran? And will they have the ability to negotiate a deal that all of these different groups inside of Iran can agree with in Pakistan? That's going to be the key for this weekend.
Yeah, Jonathan, what's your understanding of who's in charge right now and who Vice President Vance, Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff might be dealing with this weekend? Who's calling the shots?
So it is a very good question. Officially, it's the Supreme National Security Council, which has sort of coalesced as a decision-making apparatus in the wake of all those leaders that have been eliminated since the war started. But basically everyone you've seen rise to the fore since the Supreme Leader was killed and since Ali Larijani was killed a few weeks later. They all have IRGC connections in some way, even Mojtaba, the Supreme Leader's son, and now the Supreme Leader himself officially. So an IRGC connection. So is the Speaker of the Parliament, Ghalibaf. So, the short answer, but also I think if you examine it further, the long answer is the IRGC is ultimately in control. The question, again, is how centralized is that decision making? But overall, Iran can be expected to pursue a hard line.
Yeah, I keep saying to be a fly on the wall this coming weekend at that negotiating table. Jonathan Ruhe, along with Joe Khalil, Robert Sherman, thank you all for your time and perspectives this morning. Greatly appreciate it.